All right. Thank you. Welcome to another writing episode, whatever you want to call it. Today I'm going to talk about why I stopped having so much sex, profanity, and violence in my stories. It's quite a mouthful. It's quite a long title, as a matter of fact. I was trying to come up with a better one, and I was like, you know what, that's good enough. That kind of spells it all out. You know what the next 20 minutes is going to be about. There's going to be no surprises. Now, there might be me going off in the weeds as usual, but there's going to be no surprises, okay, when it comes to things. Couple things before we start, though. I want to thank everybody for subscribing. I want to thank everybody for watching at least 30 seconds of each ad. That's how we make money here on YouTube, and that helps me a lot. So I appreciate that. I appreciate everybody doing that for me. Also, check out the products that I list on all of these videos. A lot of times it's just a random thing. I'm like, you know what? I want to put whatever the products are down there. Most of the time, they're books. Click through, check out the website, see if you want to order anything. That would be appreciative. I make a small percentage of money from that as well. So I make a commission on that. That's also how I make money. And then selling my books. So, maybe check out my books too. That being said, I want to thank everybody who keeps giving me ideas for these writing prompts videos. Somebody asked me this. Somebody said, I noticed you don't have as much sex, profanity, and violence in your books anymore. Is there a reason for that? And I said, there is a reason. And I'll tell you in a 20-minute burst on my YouTube channel. And they said, thank you. And that person is no idea. That was a while ago. Whoever you are, you know who you are. A couple of you might take credit for it, even though I know you didn't give me this idea, but still, thank you very much. Okay. When I first started writing, teenager, I wrote a lot of horror books. Not books, stories. A lot of horror short stories. I thought I was writing books. And I was writing like 10,000 words. That was a book. I was like, all right, I don't know what else to do here. Let me end this. Let me violently kill somebody. Okay. Even into my 20s, I wrote a lot of stuff, a lot of short stories that had a lot of violence in them, a lot of sex, or what at the time what I thought was sex as a teenager and into my 20s, and a lot of profanity. Now, here's the thing with profanity. I grew up in New Jersey. Okay, so my parents used the F word in every sentence. Everybody did. Literally everybody. Profanity was not that big of a deal. Now, as a kid, you weren't allowed to say it in the company of adults, but we all said it constantly in our friend group, okay? On the playground, in school, we all said it. I'm sure wherever you're from, you did too. But people from New Jersey, it's an entire language to be able to use the F word or any word in those. And then, of course, I come from Italian on my dad's side, so I knew all of the Italian curses as well. So you mix a lot of those in all the time. I still do. That being said, I thought, well, that's how people talk. That's how people I grew up with. That's how people growing up in New Jersey. I was born in Newark, New Jersey. I grew up in Belford, New Jersey, part of Middletown, New Jersey. That's how everybody talked. Everybody used the F word every other word. So my characters are all going to speak like that. A lot of stuff like that. As a kid, if I read adult horror books my mother would give me, she would cross out all the sex, but she would leave all the profanity in and most of the violence, unless it was crazy over the top stuff. I'm still not a huge fan of crazy over the top stuff, but I've written a lot of over the top. I've written extreme horror stories over the years. A lot of violent stuff. Okay. I've written a lot of sex in my books. I've written a lot of profanity in my books. And my books, I mean short stories, I mean novellas, I mean novels, I mean all of it. And 38-year career at this point, 15 years full time. I've written a ton of stories. Um, 200 over 200 releases. Now that includes anthologies that I have a short story in, but that also doesn't include all the books I've taken out of print over the years or have gone out of print over the years. So I'd say even without, if you don't even count all the short stories I've had published, I still have a couple hundred releases to my name, novella and novel. So that's a lot of words, and that's a lot of profanity. Not everything has sex in it. Not everything has profanity. Not everything has violence. For the last 10 years or so, I've been mostly predominantly writing crime fiction. And for crime fiction, yeah, there's going to be a lot of violence. It's just how much violence are you going to put on the page? Okay. And I have done less and less and less. And there's a couple of reasons. The one I can't control is I'm getting older. I'm getting a better perspective on things. I used to love dirty comics. Okay, me and my buddy went and saw Andrew Dice Clay in the round at Madison Square Garden when I think we were teenagers. If you know who Andrew Dice Clay is, you know his comedy is pretty brutal. Okay, his comedy is funny but brutal. I like comics that are what is it? What's the guy's name? Anthony Jelesnik now. He has some really crazy over the top comedy. Okay, and I like all those guys. I like Tom Segura. I can name 100 comics right now, and I like that they are doing that raw material. It's funny. Nothing is sacred. I have a definite gallows sense of humor when it comes to things. In my head, I say a lot of completely inappropriate things that I don't necessarily believe, but I just think, how funny would that be if I just said that to this person at this very moment while their grandmother's dead? Whatever. You know what I mean? I'm not going to say those things, but I find those things amusing. I grew up listening to Howard Stern every morning. Every morning. So I appreciate all that stuff. And I wrote stuff where there was no, nothing was over the top. Too over the top. Too OTT. Everything was on the table, and I could say and do whatever I wanted because this was fiction, because I was just writing stuff, because this wasn't real. This wasn't in my mind, although, most writers, what they're putting on the page, is going to have some semblance of their reality. That was the first reason. I got older, and I still appreciate those comics, but like Anthony Jelesnik, however you say his name, I like his little minute clips. I watch one of his clips. It's something completely crazy. I laugh. We move on. I tried sitting down to watch one of his hour specials, and I couldn't do it. It was just too much. It was a sensory overload of inappropriateness. 25-year-old, 26-year-old me would have absolutely loved that. 56-year-old me now is like, enough. All right, tell a couple of those jokes, but be more creative, in my mind. Be more creative, be more funny without having to use those words. I guess I appreciate some of the older Sinbad, right? Sinbad was a clean comic. Never thought his stuff was funny. Maybe I would think he's funny now. I doubt it, but maybe I would. It's the same with books. I'm not a splatterpunk reader. I'm not an extreme horror reader. I've had short stories in extreme horror books. Evil Cookie, 2 or 3 of their books I've had a crazy extreme horror story in. But I'm going to be completely honest. I don't read any of the other stories. I don't want to read any of the other stories in that book because I don't think I would like them. And I know you're going to go, well, you can write it, but you can't read it. Yeah, that's at this age in my point in my life. Yeah, I'm going to do it that way. So that's the first real reason. The second reason is I have kids. Now, I don't think even back before I had kids that, violence towards children was a good thing. But I could read it and I wouldn't go freaking out. And listen, I get it. People freak out because they have kids and they don't want to see violence on kids. 100% get it. I'm not discounting any of this. It's the same thing with dogs. I'm not a dog person at all. In fact, I have a crazy fear of dogs. I don't like to be around dogs, no matter how big or small. I freak out. That doesn't mean I want to see them necessarily being murdered in books or on TV shows or movies. But I'm not going to freak out. I'm not going to freak out if a dog dies in a book. I'm not going to freak out if a child dies in a book, as long as it makes sense for the story. John Wick. And if you haven't seen John Wick, this is a spoiler alert, but I mean, it's been out long enough. Everybody's seen John Wick. Did they kill the dog? What are you killing a guy's dog for? You know what I'm saying? So I get it. I didn't immediately go, oh, I can't watch this anymore. I'm not that bad, but it also needs to make sense. Sex, profanity, violent needs to make sense in the story. If there's a character in one of my stories that does drop an F-bomb or anything, and again, I'm not even saying the words because I don't want YouTube to block this video. I don't freak out, but it's got to be one character. I don't want 5 characters sitting around a table and everybody's cursing at each other and using profanity. I don't think that is good storytelling. If you have one character in your story, in your book, that says a couple of off-color words, we're fine with that. Okay. Nothing is sacred. Like, I won't not say a thing that I think a character would normally say. Okay. And there are authors that use those words because it makes sense in the story, because it makes sense for those characters. Okay. Racial stuff, people tend to stay away from it. 100%. I normally do as well. But sometimes you need to show the reader in a word, and you know what word I'm talking about, that they are a bad person. Okay. Now maybe I shouldn't use that word. I've maybe used it 2-3 times in stories over a 38-year career, and only when I thought it really needed to be used, and that person always basically got shot in the face or whatever. That person was not the hero at the end. That was not our main character. That was the evil villain person, and he got his comeuppance, as they say in writing parlance. All the big words I'm using. Even just talking about this stuff is making me uncomfortable, and I think that's part of it too. Being older, realizing through my own experiences, through the world, that maybe that's my outlook on things has changed. Having kids has changed. When I wrote my Dying Days zombie series, it's pretty extreme, okay, for the time. For 2009, it was the main twist of the zombies. I'm not even going to say what it is here because I'm going to get YouTube's going to get mad at me. But I would never write that story again. Never. I would never do that now. Okay. And probably if I could go back and tell my, what was it, 38, 39 years old when I wrote that book, maybe if I could tell that person, hey, don't do this. Your kids are young and respect women and blah, blah, all that. I probably wouldn't have written that series, or I would have changed that part of it. I tried to, as I got to 9 books, I tried to get away from that and hope people didn't read the first 2-3 books and then go, oh, this guy is insane. Hey, hold on one second. Will you stop? Cat, playing in a box of envelopes, trying to rip up padded envelopes. They cost more than you, buddy. Should be fine. I'm leaving this in, by the way. So for me, I don't think you need it all the time. And it's funny because now, I was writing horror. So there's going to be there's some inherent violence in the system. But there's also, it doesn't need to be as graphic. Okay. I am a big fan of quiet horror. I'm a big fan of off-screen stuff. So I think I kind of realized that why am I dumbing these stories down? Why do I think the reader is dumb? And they need to know, okay, I can't just say, well, Bobby got murdered last night. We got to go seek revenge. Where before I would show Bobby getting murdered for 5 pages and ripped apart and all these horrific torture porn things done to his body. Why? What's the point of that? And obviously there's going to be a little more than, hey, Bobby got killed last night. Let's go find out who did it kind of thing. There's going to be more to it, but we're going to see most of the violence off camera. I want to put that part in the reader's head and make them think of horrific things that would be done to this character without me having to take their hand and walk them through it. Okay. And I think that's important too, is, ownership for the reader to understand a story and not have to be led by the hand throughout the entire, from point A to point B to point C to point D. And a lot of that has to do with sex and profanity and violence. I'm not comfortable writing sex. I don't know why. Maybe it's the Roman Catholic guilt in me. I don't really write a lot of it. Not a lot of my stories have boyfriend girlfriend dynamics, or most of my characters are flawed and they're divorced, or they're not seeing anyone at the moment, and I don't know why I write those characters, especially for somebody I've been married 3 times. So it's not like I've never had a date in my life. But I've always kind of shied away from that, and then had some crazy stuff. I remember I was writing a book, and I had I'd written a part, and it was like a necrophilia kind of thing. And the beta readers were all like, what are you? No. This is nothing to do. You want to show this character is so awful, but this is beyond that. And I realized, you know what? I don't need this. I don't need to put this part in it. And I didn't. I deleted that whole section of the story and rewrote it. The guy still did bad things to people. It's not like he just, you know what? Instead of doing that, I'm going to take you all out for ice cream. He didn't do that. But, so like that's a big part of it for me, is I don't have I never really had a ton of sex, but I have even less in it now. Or it's going to be a consensual, it's going to be maybe, boy, girl flirting with each other, that kind of thing. Maybe a character is actually married now. I tend to write, obviously now I'm tending to write older characters around my age. And looking back with regret on all the things they missed out and things like that, which makes sense at my age to do that, to realize at 56, I don't think I'm going to live to be, say, 113. So I think more than half of my life is over right now. So what do I want to accomplish, and what would these people in these stories want to accomplish? And again, a lot of the violence needs to be off stage. It needs to be implied. There needs to be some violence. I'm not going to say you don't shoot somebody 3 times because it's a mob hit or something. But just don't. I don't want to glorify it in 5 pages. You know what I mean? I don't want to do that scene where you shoot the guy in the shoulder and then he falls to the ground and then you give the big soliloquy while you stand on his shoulder and he screams in pain and passes out and then you wake him up and then I don't want to do all that. Okay, and I've done those stories. I've done tons of those stories where I'm like, what? How can I push the envelope? And I don't want to push that envelope anymore. I just want to tell a good story. I just want to write pulp fiction, good story that people will appreciate and move on and read something else from mine. I mean, that's pretty much why I'm doing this. I'm doing this to tell a story that I haven't read before. I'm writing a story for myself first. And I realized I don't want the profanity. I don't want the sex. I don't want the violence. My Dirty Deeds series, 12 books, no profanity, no sex, and not a ton of violence, although there's violence in every, there's murder, there's kidnapping, there's things happening in all 12 books, but not violence for violence sake. There's none of that. So that being said, you as a writer, and I would imagine you're a writer if you're watching these, what's your take on it? Where do you draw that line? Or do you draw that line? Do you say, you know what? Boulder Dash. Again, sorry for the profanity. None of that makes sense. I write as much sex and profanity and violence as I want in my stories. That's cool. 100%, I got no problem with that. We're all different people. We're all unique. We're all different writers. And I love that part. I'm glad we're not just cookie cutter. Everybody's writing the same stuff. God, how boring that would be. But I want to know from you. I want to know what you're feeling on this. Do you limit yourself? Do you sit down and write a story and go, you know what? This is going to be a very violent take on something. Or do you say, you know what? I'm going to scale this back a little bit. I'm not comfortable writing such a violent thing. I'm not comfortable writing a character who uses racial slurs. I'm not comfortable with characters who drop F-bombs every other sentence. Let me know what your take is on it. Again, thank you for subscribing. Thank you for watching my writing videos. Every Wednesday, every Sunday, a new writing video drops. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I am live on YouTube Live at noon Eastern Standard Time. Come hang out in the chat with us. Talk. I answer questions. I talk about a lot of weird, random things, and we just generally have a good time. This is what's keeping me sane at this point in my life. Whew, I feel like I talked a lot. All right, that's enough.